¿Qué tal amigos? Estamos nuevamente aquí en Mares Mexicanos, a cuyos seguidores les mando un cordial saludo. Ojalá nos ayuden a difundir nuestra labor de investigación científica y de divulgación a través de todos nuestros canales. En esta ocasión, charlaremos con el Dr. William Gili de Hopkins Marine Station de la Universidad de Stanford y con el Dr. Unai Marcay del Colegio de la Frontera Sur. En este artículo titulado Cambios hidrográficos de largo plazo en el Golfo de California e impactos ecológicos, una fractura en el acuario del mundo. A nivel internacional, el Golfo de California se ha considerado como un lugar megadiverso y con alta biomasa. De hecho, Riqueza y Steinberg en 1941 hicieron una de las primeras expediciones en el Golfo de California y demostraron eso, que era altamente biodiverso. Pero esto ha ido cambiando a lo largo de las décadas. El doctor William Gili cuestiona si realmente el Golfo de California, considerado el acuario del mundo, no se está fragmentando. Ellos demostraron esto mediante estudios de la pesquería de calamar y de pesquería de pesca deportiva. Ellos han demostrado que ha habido colapsos grandes en las pesquerías y que en el caso del calamar, que en la década del 2010 existían calamares de cerca de 90 centímetros, se han venido haciendo más pequeños en tallas de adultos debido al calentamiento climático. Ven y acompáñanos a esta charla con el Dr. Gili. Bienvenidos. Hoy tenemos una sesión más de resiliencia del Golfo de California y hoy tenemos dos invitados especiales. El primero es el Dr. William Gili de Hopkins Marine Station Stanford University de Pacific Grove, Estados Unidos. Y nuestro segundo invitado es Unai Marcaida, el doctor Unai Marcaida, del Colegio de la Frontera Sur en Campeche. Entonces, bienvenido, welcome Gili, bienvenido Unai en esta sesión de resiliencia del Golfo de California.
Buenos días.
Buenos días.
Bien, fíjense que hoy vamos a platicar sobre su trabajo que publicaba en Progress in Oceanography acerca de los cambios hidrológicos a largo plazo en el Golfo de California y los impactos y que ha tenido en algunos componentes del Golfo de California, ahora que se piensa que es el acuario del mundo y que ustedes de alguna manera están diciendo, bueno, o están cuestionando si ese acuario está roto. Entonces me gustaría iniciar preguntando al doctor Gili. Gili, now that you are telling that there are some ecological problem in the Gulf of California that made us think that the aquarium of the world perhaps is cracking. Why do you think that the Gulf of California is diverse, and why do you think that they have been giving some signs of cracking in the ecosystem?
Well, I think it's diverse because it's a very remote place that is highly biodiverse and lots of animals in it. I think everyone believes that. But over the years that I've been going there for the last 40 years, things have been getting less abundant. Various kinds of fish that you catch sport fishing. I see myself not getting not being as abundant. Squid, which we worked on for the last 25 years, have changed in size from being gigantic, the size of a human being, to being 20 centimeters long. So this is a big change in the ecosystem. Sperm whales that fed on the big squid are no longer there. And we've been seeing these changes as we've been monitoring oceanographic properties just for other reasons, not because we thought they would tell us about ecological change, but we began to look at the oceanographic properties and comparing it to the ecological changes that we were working on, mostly with squid, and realized that things were changing a lot and it's not sure where we're headed.
Yeah, but I don't know when you start coming to the Gulf of California, but when Jacques Cousteau came here in the 1960s, he named it the aquarium of the world. And then the population around the Gulf of California was about 1 million people, and now it is 11 million people. So, in some way, the Gulf of California has been being impacted by human population and more activity. But how long is problem of climatic change, or how much is problem of human activity?
That probably depends on which species you're talking about. So,
Okay.
in the case of squid, and most of the places I go to in the Gulf of California are very remote, so I don't see differences in the human activities much between 1980 and today.
Mm.
I don't go to La Paz and Cabo San Lucas and the populated places, or Guaymas, mostly Santa Rosalia and places where there aren't a lot of people. So, um, but in the case of the squid, it was a huge fishery, but it was all a fishery. It was a very artisanal. The amount of squid they caught was quite large, 100,000 tons a year in a really good year, but it was fairly stable, even in the face of a strong El Nino in 1982, 83, and well, that fishery was just starting then. But in 1997, 98, the strong El Nino caused the fishery to collapse for reasons we didn't understand until much later. But the fishery came back within a few years, and so it was a very robust fishery. And basically, in a 2009 2010 El Nino, the fishery collapsed again. And then we realized that El Nino makes the squid take on a tropical phenotype where they only live 6 months and reproduce when they're very, very small, only 6 months old. And they did that in 1997, 98 as well. And so but the conditions in 2000, after the 2009 and 10 El Nino, never really got proper again. They were, it was too warm at depth in the summer. There were no winter winds, so there was low productivity, and the squid never recovered back to their full size and lifespan. And then there was another El Nino in 2015, and then that seems to have permanently put the squid in this small tropical phenotype. So there's been no squid fit, and the fishery collapsed and stopped basically in 2015. So there's been no fishing for squid for 8 years, and there's no big squid. So we don't know much about the small squid, but there's no big ones. And so if there were big ones, people would be fishing for them. So to say that the fishery was a problem for the squid, there's no evidence for that. However, so that's one species. However, if you look at something like sardines and small pelagic fishes, fish that other fish eat, bigger fish, marlin, tuna, things like that, those fisheries became immense during the time of the squid fishery as well. And after the El Nino, they also collapsed. And there was a lot of attention directed from sardines to other small pelagic fishes. The amount of fishing pressure on these other species like herring, threadfin herring, and anchoveta, other small pelagics other than sardines, has seemed to have effects on the fish ecosystems of various species. So the climate, I think the climate issues may affect sardines and other pelagics much like they affect squid, but in the case of sardines and other pelagics, you have an industrialized fishery that's extremely large and intense, and it's a probably combination there of fishing pressure and environmental pressure that's keeping those hurting some of those species. It's not just squid and sardines and sperm whales and sea lions. There are other species that have been showing declines and issues, I think.
Me gustaría preguntarle al doctor Unai. Gilly nos comentó de cómo los cambios climáticos en el Golfo de California han tenido algunas especies ganadoras y perdedoras. En el caso de calamar, ¿Tú la considerarías una especie ganadora o perdedora con esto del cambio climático?
Para mí es muy difícil separar el cambio climático del esfuerzo pesquero. O sea, eh, yo creo que históricamente casi todas las especies del Golfo de California han ido a la baja por sobrepesca. Por ejemplo, el pepino o la totoaba o muchos otros ejemplos de pesquerías que han colapsado, ¿no? Completamente. En cuanto al calamar, mira, cuando empezamos a trabajar y venía vimos el calamar en pura expansión, cuando empezamos en el 95, era una especie que tenía poca importancia, casi nadie lo pelaba, y 5 o 6 años después estaba invadiendo el Pacífico. Eran los titulares, eran bastante alarmistas, estaban invadiendo todo el Pacífico, estaba llegando a Alaska y creíamos que se iba a comer el océano. Y yo siempre le comentaba a Gil, siempre que lo comentamos, yo le dije, yo creo que esto va a terminar en algún momento va a colapsar, y no por la pesquería, sino que en algún momento por razones naturales o climáticas, esta especie va a regresar o va a volver a desaparecer. Entonces, evidentemente, pues sí ha perdido en los últimos 7 años, pero bueno, en los últimos 20 hemos tenido calamar y yo creo que va a regresar, ¿no? Si las condiciones son favorables, se podría recuperar en un par de años y tendremos calamar abundante para soportar de nuevo la pesquería. Entonces, que sea ganador o perdedor, yo no podría decir si es una cosa u otra. El calamar es un animal altamente oportunista y va a haber décadas que va a abundar y va a haber décadas que va a faltar, ¿no?
Sí. But that is an interesting thing that the jumbo squid is changing by cycle. I mean, some decades they're abundant, eventually they have long period that disappear. But I would like to ask Gilly, the Steinberg and Riquet expedition in the 1940s, they never recorded jumbo squid. So perhaps, do you think that climatic change perhaps had been enabled the northward shift of distribution of jumbo squid in the northern hemisphere, including the Gulf of California?
I think that's probably true. I think we tried to go back and look at all the records of jumbo squid in the Gulf of California in the popular literature and historical literature and scientific literature, and you cannot find any records anywhere going back to the Jesuit naturalists in the 17th century. You cannot find any indication of anyone seeing big squid on the beach or in the ocean. And the big squid appeared in the 1970s. So that's the first time anyone saw large squid in the Gulf of California was in the mid 1970s. Some kind of environmental window must have opened up that allowed the small squid to live for longer. So that seems to be what must have happened in the 1960s sometime when Jacques Cousteau was there. He didn't see them. Then that window closed during El Nino in 1982-83 probably, and then it reopened because conditions got good, and then it closed again in 97-98, but it reopened because conditions got good, and it closed again in 2010 and started opening a little bit, but conditions got bad again, quite bad in 2015 and 16, and now they say another El Nino's coming this year. We've been in La Nina for 3 years, and the squid haven't gotten big, so I don't think this El Nino that's developing now in 2023 is going to help the situation for the squid. But I think the squid were just not there when Steinbeck, the big ones were not there when Steinbeck and Ricketts were there, and probably were just beginning to arrive after Jacques Cousteau left.
Yes, unfortunately, we didn't see it in the 1960s, 70s. We don't have a lot of record when no fishery was working on in the Gulf of California. So basically, we are blind of what is a healthy Gulf of California in the pelagic ecosystem. Me gustaría preguntarle al doctor Marcaida que nos explique un poco más al público qué significa que el calamar sea grande o pequeño tanto ecosistémicamente, o sea, a los organismos, como a los pescadores. O sea, ¿por qué los pescadores pues, simplemente no se ven atraídos de pescar jumbo squid enano de 25 centímetros y solamente lo hacen cuando es más grande que eso?
La talla final del calamar, la talla a la que madura y desova y posteriormente muere en poco tiempo, se ve determinada en algún momento de la vida. Creemos que en etapas tempranas de la vida se ve determinada hasta qué talla va a crecer este animal. Entonces, en condiciones favorables de periodos de agua templada, fría, con mucha productividad en el mar, como son los periodos de la niña, este calamar puede, las bajas temperaturas retrasan la madurez de estos animales y este calamar tiene más alimento, come y crece hasta grandes tallas. Sin embargo, en periodos cálidos de temperaturas altas y baja productividad, el calamar no tiene manera de crecer a tallas tan grandes. La alta temperatura, para empezar, va a hacer que madure antes. Y estos calamares maduran y mueren a tallas mucho menores. Claro, esto para la pesquería también tiene una gran importancia porque el calamar grande, para los pescadores, en Santa Rosalía, por ejemplo, van a pescar con una lancha y en 5 minutos llegan a sus lugares de pesca y en un par de horas llenan una tonelada de producto en la panga. Esas son las pesquerías más productivas del mundo para cualquier pesca artesanal. No hay otro producto en el mundo donde puedas pescar una tonelada en 1 o 2 horas. Cuando el calamar no alcanza, los años que el calamar no alcanza esas tallas gigantes, pues para la pesquería no hay interés porque se tardarían un buen en completar 1 tonelada. Otra cosa muy importante, cuando el calamar es grande es mucho más abundante, las poblaciones son mucho más grandes. Cuando el calamar es chico, incluso es más difícil de ver y no es tan abundante.
So, Gilly, now that Dr. Marcay explained us the difference between a big jumbo squid and a small jumbo squid, I understand that the jumbo squid is an animal, is a big predator. What effect has to have a large population of big jumbo squid or a small population of a small jumbo squid? I mean, what is the response of the rest of the animals to this kind of population in the Golfo de California?
The squid is a big predator when it's large, and when it was in Alaska, it was eating 50 different species of fish or something like that, but in the Gulf of California, they only eat a few species of fish. So the big squid and the little squid more or less have the same diet. The downstream effect of squids on lower things in the food webs probably isn't that great, but the effects on other species that would feed on big squid are probably very big, like sperm whales, which prefer big squid and can't catch the tiny little ones, so they don't eat those. They've abandoned the Gulf of California essentially. Seabirds can catch small squid and eat them. So in the old days, you'd see sperm whales hanging around the central Gulf of California eating squid, and now you see birds eating little squid. So some species may be helped by the presence of small squid. Other species are hurt by the absence of large squid.
Well, several scientists have been finding that in the last decade, for example, decline in sea lion population in the tertiary reproductive colony in the Gulf of California, or at Isla Raza, the several seabirds that have been declining population. We expected to find a decline in the base of the trophic wetfoot. But all the changes that we have been seeing is in high trophic level. I think it's something quite interesting to understand why. What do you think that could be possible causes of this trend?
I think the environmental signals affect sardines and possibly other small pelagics like they do squid. It's not a favorable condition for them, and that has upstream effects on food webs. So predators on small pelagics, if there aren't as many small pelagics, will suffer with an El Nino. That's well known, and maybe with marine heat waves and other climate stress as well. That low productivity that's low primary productivity, we really need to be sampling regularly in the Gulf. So you guys do cruises all the time, and so that needs to be continued, and that's the only way you can detect the long-term decline.
Hay múltiples factores ahí que hay que tener en cuenta. Según otro colega, Carlos Robinson de la UNAM, parece ser que el fitoplancton, tú hablas de que el zooplancton ha sido estable, pero parece ser que el fitoplancton no se ha restablecido, sigue en niveles muy bajos desde el año 2015 más o menos, ¿no? Y ese podría ser una de las grandes respuestas aquí, ¿no?
We are seeing a crack in the aquarium of the world ocean, but how big is this crack, or what we can expect in the future, what we as humans can do to be resilient at this climatic change in the Gulf of California?
Well, I think it's resilient because, as you point out, there's lots of zooplankton, and if productivity continues, and we have upwelling and high productivity, the system will rebound and recover to some. But in the face of large-scale climate change, with more marine heat waves, with altered weather patterns, with no wind, with weaker winds in the winter and less upwelling, all these things are going to have complicated effects that we can't really predict, and they will act to decrease this resilience for sure. So I think, how do we plug the cracks? I guess we figure out ways to improve climate change globally or on a large scale, because if we don't do that, we're going to continue to see warmer seas, more heat waves, altered weather patterns that probably will interfere with winter winds, which makes upwelling. I think we do need to worry about commercial fishing as well. So that there does need to be close monitoring of that, along with ecosystem monitoring and oceanographic monitoring, and working all those data sets together is the only way we can really understand whether the cracks are getting bigger or smaller.
Everybody wants to have a healthy sea, a productive sea, no pollution and anything, but it's quite difficult, particularly in the Gulf of California, where there are many fisheries working at the same time. I think that Mexico is facing big challenge to do good management. I think this is very complex to do that, but it's something that we have to face for this decade at the net one, isn't it? Well, I would like to thank for the time in this interview, having this special series of the resilience of the Gulf of California that together we have been doing to know a little bit better the Gulf of California and try to figure out what is the big problem that is facing this amazing Gulf in Mexico.